Welcome to the Show Me KC Schools podcast, where we help families make well-informed decisions about their child's education. I'm Danielle, the Director of School Navigation with Show Me KC Schools, and I'm really excited for you all to tune in today. Today, I'm joined by Kansas City parent education advocate Cassandra Bruington, and we're going to chat about the Show Me KC Schools school search tools. That's really a lot and a tongue twister. How to use them and how Cassandra has utilized some of them and other tools that she's used in her school search for her own child. So welcome, Cassandra, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. So you are like out and about a lot right now. Like, let's go ahead and acknowledge that. You're also participating in the Parent Leadership Institute. Is that correct? With Julie and her team. I know that I've seen some things on there recently. They are actually featured as one of the partner organizations in our workbook that we're going to be highlighting today. How has that been going?
I love PLTI. It's amazing. In fact, my 3-year-old, he has this chant when we are headed to classes on Wednesday nights. I love PLTI. I love PLTI. It's been amazing just to get the tools, the access to other parents in the community who are wanting to advocate, who are wanting to get information and apply it. It feels like I'm not alone in wanting to have boots on the ground and an ear to the ground as well to see what's going on when it comes to education in our children. So I've really loved the opportunity to participate.
Yeah, no, I love hearing that. It's so great to have someone in the seat. For our listeners, there is an episode that I know Nina hosted a while back with Julie and Rebecca from Parent Power Lab. So both of those organizations are doing really great work, and I'm so excited that you have been participating.
Yes, in both, actually. I just finished my Parent
Oh my gosh, that's right.
My Parent Power Lab training.
Yes, I saw you on there as well. I was like, there has been so many things recently. That's great. And of course, the reason that we have invited you to join us today is because you're a parent.
Yes.
And also your background in education.
Absolutely.
Would you like to share anything about that as well?
Absolutely. So I've spent almost 15 years in education. I started out as a classroom teacher here in Kansas City, Missouri.
Yes.
Before that, I was inspired to go into the classroom because my mom is an educator and I was studying abroad. I was literally seeing the achievement gap in another country. I was in South Africa at Stellenbosch University.
Wow.
And volunteering, and found out that the same thing that was happening in Stellenbosch or Kayamandi was happening in Kansas City and Chicago and LA and, so many cities. And so I took my passion for social work and child and family studies and took it into the classroom. So I started my education in 2009, my education career in 2009. And I became a mom in 2020. And everyone knows 2020
That's right.
was, a year for the books. And I remember thinking as schools transition to virtual school, that parents were going to need support. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was on bed rest and I could not work and I could not go anywhere. And so I started virtual tutoring and supporting a teacher who was struggling with classroom management in Mexico. So I was teaching reading, I was healing and resting myself, and then I was supporting a teacher who was dealing with a whole different culture on top of the issues and some of the challenges that COVID presented. And so when I had Josiah, I was like, I don't need to go back to a building right now. I really feel like I can support parents a different way. So I started a virtual tutoring company that's now transitioned into parent support. And like you said earlier, it really is boots on the ground. Like, I'm outside as I transition back to Kansas City. I'm looking for what is happening with parents, what's happening with education. How can I use my background as a teacher, as an instructional coach, as a consultant to also parent and empower parents in the city.
Yeah. And I think that takes us right into, honestly, the community of parents and caregivers, right? All of a sudden you're a part of it, just like that,
Just like that.
Boom. And it's a great group to be a part of.
Absolutely.
Anywhere, worldwide, as you so kindly pointed out in all of
Yes.
your personal experience and the perspective that you have with it, I think just makes us better. It gives us more tools, which is what we're going to talk about today on how to advocate for ourselves and how to be an advocate for our fellow parents and caregivers and the kiddos in their care.
Yeah.
So Show Me KC Schools, of course, is a local nonprofit that helps families understand this educational landscape here within the Kansas City public school boundaries. We've been dedicated to that now for 10 years. We're in our 10th year and celebrating that anniversary, which is really exciting. And we talk about tools in the toolbox and then also leaning into community during this process. And that's why we were so excited to have you join us and your willingness to share your personal experience and your expertise in all of this with your own child. So we have the Show Me KC Schools website. What we call the printed school guide is just like a snapshot, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to give you all of the information that you can find on our website. But it is literally just that. It's a little bit of everything that's there. Right. We've really tried to do some jumping off points, in other capacities with printed materials and our website materials. I do want to take a moment and share with our listeners who may be watching video-wise on going to our website. When you land on our homepage, you go over to resources, and on resources, we have downloads and guides. I always tell folks the printed school guide is in all of the Kansas City public libraries. We do our best to keep it stocked there on a regular basis. And we also will strategically drop it in coffee shops and laundromats and grocery stores throughout the city as well. But on our resources page under downloads and guides, you can see that it's an option to download the guide if you wanted to. Though I would encourage folks to go through the school search process on the website. And then from there, we also have the workbook that we're going to be talking about today, and including some of the one-off printables that are within the workbook as well. So just really wanted to show folks how to find that on our website as a reminder that it's there too. Cassandra, would you mind sharing with us, was the school guide something that you found? Was it given to you? And did you utilize it at all in your school search process? Or were you more of a digital person and you were online looking up schools?
Yes, I feel like such a parent nerd because I love this book. There was when I moved back to Kansas City and was looking for a school for my son Josiah, I carried it around with me. I received it in the mail. And I was like, ooh, what is this? And I've seen copies around the city. I get really excited when I see copies, and I'm tempted to take one, but I already have one. Because
we do, though sometimes it will be an updated edition. So yes. I'm actually glad that you said that, because if you're a parent and you find that you have one that's from years past, know that they don't change tremendously, but we do try to add information. And a for example of that is that we have included in our new printed school guides, information on early childhood specifically, because that's a whole nother layer of difficult navigation, which you've gone through just recently. Exactly. So if anyone is sitting in the same position that you were, where they have an old school guide in their hand and they see that there's an actual new updated version, that's permission to take the updated version.
I think you brought the updated version when we met, or I got it from Nina, and I'm like, ooh, there's a new one. There's a new edition. It's like Netflix coming out with a new series.
Oh, that's high praise.
Yes. But yeah, so I got mine in the mail. I've seen it since, but I really used it. Josiah was one, but I was transitioning back to Kansas City. Before he was born, he was diagnosed with spina bifida, myelomeningocele, which is open spine. So the doctors noticed that on an ultrasound in my womb.
Wow.
I had surgery at 5 months. And on March 9th, I went in for surgery in utero. They opened me up, closed him up, closed me back up. We went not home, 2 hours from home. I was staying with a friend's friend who allowed me to continue my bed rest there. But we got back home to that friend's home on March 13th, 2020. And that is the day known for the day the world shut down.
No kidding.
So my last trimester of pregnancy was so different. I took lots of notes, made sure that I was healing physically, spiritually, emotionally, all of the ways. And so my last trimester allowed me to start to vision set for our life.
Yeah.
Where will, not only where will he go to school, what quality of life will he have? And I started to backwards plan. I started to think really big, and then start to think about region and school, location and community. And so when I transitioned to Kansas City, this guide was amazing because it was like a reference point.
Right.
I had already set this really big vision, and now I got to put the pieces together with this tool and this resource. And so, yes, it was, you would think with my background in education, it was really smooth to transition back, and I knew exactly what to look for and where to look, but so much has changed since I last lived in Kansas City, and so much changes
on a regular basis.
And so much has changed about me and and what I'm looking for in life, and just the stage of life that I'm in. And so I was able to reference what mattered for our family, thinking about his social, emotional, and academic needs, thinking about, okay, mom is a teacher, but what kind of support will I need in order to make sure that he lives out the vision for his life. So the book, that really is my excitement. Like, I literally get butterflies and excited. I've had friends ask me about schools and Cass, where should I, what should I look for in a school, especially early childhood, like you mentioned.
Right.
And I always tell them, it's a conversation. We got to talk about who you are, what your goals are personally and for your family, and what's your vision. Like, think really big. Don't think about your child just in kindergarten or in high school. What kind of adult, what kind of quality of life, what impression or imprint do you want them to leave? And I think it starts there. And so this book is great for that.
Yeah, no, I love hearing that. I always tell people this is like another one of my children, this book. And I don't know at what point in time I ever thought that I would be proofing and editing and pulling and trying to, put the most important bit of information that I feel like a parent would need in this book, so that they have it at their disposal, and to be able to revisit it, which is what I hear you saying. I always tell families when I'm working with them, I'm like, dog ear this book, put the Post-it notes in it, write in it. You're gonna have conversations with friends and family members, and their student is gonna go to a particular school, and you're gonna want to make a note of that in there, so that you can revisit that. We, of course, have a comparative tool on our website where if you have schools that you want to look at side by side, then there's the option to be able to do that. But I always used to say the same thing when my now 14-year-old, was starting kindergarten, and Aaron and I were going through this. I'm like, you can only have so many tabs open on your computer before it's just overwhelming, right? And I do think that there's something about being able to close the book, set it down, walk away, and come back again. And then when it is time to jump over to the computer, that the websites are there. That those reference points are there. A few things that I always like to highlight, and I think that, your story is so impactful in the fact that you returned to Kansas City. But one of the things that we have in here is this visual map of the Kansas City metropolitan area, right? I meet with a lot of folks that are moving in, and it's an additional level of overwhelm on top of this already complicated school system to navigate. And so that can be really, really helpful, because it just goes to show you and gives you the jumping off points, so that when you are looking at places to live, if you need to double check things, I tell folks, hey, Realtor.com, Zillow, they're great. but the school listings that are on there are not always accurate. And they're not, so if it's listing a school and not labeling it correctly, it could be misleading. And so we would love for folks to be able to come back to our website, double check those things, and know exactly where they're going. Furthermore, if you're not within the Kansas City public school boundaries, there are additional things within the guide that are just good to know. Public school systems, many of them have pre-K seats. They oftentimes can be reserved for families who qualify for free and reduced lunch or Head Start. So we've got little bits of that information in here just to maybe jumpstart folks on their journey in that very beginning stages. And then also a little bit of a snapshot into special education. We know that is a huge area that if a parent finds themselves, if they are have that opportunity to have a student in special education and they're navigating the space of IEPs and 504s, it's always good to know where you can reference back to for some of that baseline information that came from IDEA and that you're going to find on the state's website. And we've worked on creating podcast series and episodes that are catered to that as well. So it's chocked full of a ton of information. And I'm so glad to hear that you had a positive experience
Absolutely.
in it. Yeah. So let's talk about your journey then of narrowing some of those schools down, because we're going to talk about the workbook, but let's save that for the second half of the episode.
Okay.
And let's talk about, from the school guide, where you found yourself kind of filtering or funneling, and what was that next step?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier about Josiah's diagnosis. That's my son. And I knew that really securing his physical success was going to be important early on. So he received physical therapy, and I was looking for a school that would be able to support him as he was learning to walk. He didn't walk right at age 1. And so where it would be safe, where the ratio, the student to teacher ratio would be one which the teachers could keep an eye and observe, because he wasn't up and walking like other kids his age might be. And so that was really important to me. I was like, academics, of course, and social emotional and all of that will come, but I want my child walking and I want him safe.
Yes.
And so as I visited different schools and even looked at the guide, it was like, what schools have that embedded in their mission, vision, and purpose? And I got really, really blessed to find Ability KC.
Yes.
Like tremendously blessed that we were able to enroll there. And Josiah had just turned 1, and he learned to crawl and walk and run and jump and roll and run away from me through physical therapy and support there, water aerobics, meeting with an amazing physical therapist 2 or 3 times a week. We're not even at Ability Kansas City full time anymore, but he still goes there for physical therapy. So that very, very great beginning and start has set him up for success. He's now going to be playing soccer in a few weeks. I'm like, what? My baby is playing soccer? But I think about when I handed him over, right? This is the middle of COVID. And so it was a lot of trust, and it was a lot of just relying on the fact that I had used resources and tools and asked questions and done my due diligence and prayed about it and really trusting and entrusting my child. And now, almost 4 years later, I'm seeing that that time was well spent and well invested. And now, as he's transitioning into pre-K 4, we have reached a lot of developmental milestones physically and even socially and academically.
Right.
And so now my focus is really different than it was. And so going back, like you mentioned, going back to the guide and saying, okay, now where are we at now? What's the focus now? What does Josiah need? What support do I need? It will help me navigate the next steps for his education.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that, what you were describing earlier too, as far as, and we talked about this, whenever we met, about having a vision, right? And really just allowing yourself to daydream a little bit and set some of those expectations and goals. Now to see that come to fruition and those abilities are just soaring.
Yeah.
And you're able to go into soccer. I mean, Ability KC is a phenomenal resource here in Kansas City. For folks who don't know, they serve families literally from birth 1-year-olds all the way through in their rehabilitation care of adults and other working individuals.
Yep.
Little known fact, I actually worked for Ability KC years ago before Show Me KC Schools. So it holds a very soft spot in my heart. And I love them. And they truly are an innovative space for early childhood special education and early childhood therapeutic interventions. They're at the Children's Center campus at 31st and Main. So if you didn't know what that brick building was, now you do. They share a space with Children's Center for the Visually Impaired, so changing lives. And they also, I think, are a great launch pad for showing parents how they can continue to advocate for their children and how to have those visions.
Absolutely.
Long term.
Yeah, their staff and support is amazing. I really consider them an extension of our village and our family. And so transitioning when Josiah turned 3 away from Ability as his primary school or spot was really emotional. I was like, I know I'll see you guys twice a week for physical therapy.
Right.
But it really was like, it was a transition, but it was also me moving along the path in this roadmap that I had set out for Josiah. So a part of my vision for my life and his life is that we are global citizens. I love to travel. Me being in South Africa to study abroad was not by accident or coincidence. I'm a military child. And so born in Germany, having explored Europe when I was in middle school and just like the travel bug being instilled in me, so was language. And so when I taught in Costa Rica, I really committed to being bilingual. And when I found out I was having a baby boy and we need to set a vision for the family, I want him to be multilingual, but let's start with Spanish.
Yeah.
And so we transitioned to Guadalupe Centers as a result of, okay, the physical is in place, the academic is covered, that social, emotional, and language.
Yeah.
That is the ideal place for him to be for the next 2 years. And so I love that we have not only options and choices, but like you said, when you dream a little, even if you just dream a little, like parents, if you close your eyes and you're like, what could be possible? And if you start to smile and your heart starts to open up a little bit, follow that, like plan and bet on that. And so that's what we're doing. And I love that I get to speak Spanglish with Josiah and that we are on the path to create, a life where he has lots of options.
That's great. I love that. Well, we're going to take a break.
Okay.
But when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the things that we want to highlight in the workbook and maybe how some of those have crept into your navigation as well.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, we're back. Yes. So we left off in a really great place of being able to hear about the beginning, early childhood navigation and the amazing services that you were able to secure for your son, and what that looked like, and a big decision, of course, on your part, we were talking about during the break, was that Ability KC was such an amazing intervention preschool that really put your son on a launch pad and got him exactly where he needed to be. Now, he could have stayed attending there up until it was time to start kindergarten, but as you shared so eloquently, like you had visions of things and you had, elements of school and environment and whatnot that you had thought about. And you were like, well, let's explore what the options are. And so you made a big decision to go ahead and move into a P3 or PK3, right? We talk about in the school guide, we define, some of these things. You come into these spaces and you're like, well, what the heck does P3 mean?
Right.
Like, what are these people talking about? So preschool or pre-K for 3-year-olds.
Yes.
You said he'll be in P4 next year, which would be pre-K for 4-year-olds. And then after that, generally students go on to kindergarten.
Oh my goodness.
Which is huge. But so we have the guidebook, and earlier I showed folks how to find that on our Show Me KC Schools website.
Right.
Nina is amazing. Nina will have everything linked in the show notes also. And one of the things that Nina did recently is she took the PDF for the workbook, made it fillable so that if for those of you who don't like paper,
Nice.
you don't have to take the paper workbook. You can refer to it online. Now, Cassandra, I know that you didn't have a workbook. This wasn't an element that you had encountered yet whenever you were on your search. But I wanted to go through the 4-step process that we've created because in all actuality, you did so much of it. What the workbook is just capturing it for folks who actually don't know how to approach it, right? And so in the beginning, you talked about the research and knowing that you were going to be back in Kansas City. And we have highlighted these things in different questions for parents and caregivers to ask themselves when they are about to embark on this journey. And I always go to logistical needs as being like, this is the baseline, right?
Yeah.
Let's really think about logistical needs. For you all, again, Ability KC met so many needs. So location of the actual building probably came into that. But then the fact that you were able to go to an early childhood center that had all of the therapeutic intervention services that you
Yes.
needed, plus preschool in one setting.
Yes.
That's like the dream.
Yep. It was.
Right? Yes, exactly. And so I'm sure that you did this, but did you find that you were taking notes, that you were writing things down, that you were prioritizing in any way? And if so, what did that look like?
Oh, yes. Okay, let me back up. So when I took time off from working, I started my business and I was full-time at home. I had the gift and the privilege, I realized that it was a privilege during COVID, of time.
Yeah.
Had a lot of time with Josiah. So I was very aware of who he was, what he needed, and all of the things, and aware of what I needed as I transitioned back. So I accepted a role that was virtual here in Kansas City, and eventually it was like, yeah, we need you to come to Kansas City. So I called ahead, and I want to just you spoke to this before about community, because I had friends and extended family, I would consider, here in Kansas City. I called ahead to ask some of these questions that would have to do with logistics. Being a single mom, thinking about who's going to be my emergency contact. If something were to happen, who could pick Josiah up or drop him off, or who's comfortable with, those questions. I called ahead and got enough there for yous and support that I was comfortable in transitioning. So that was really something that I considered. Then before I moved, I came to Kansas City a couple of times, at least 3 or 4 times, and visited friends, of course, but went to these child care centers.
Yes.
So that I could see the space. Again, having the gift of time with my son, I knew the environment that I wanted him in. And a lot of it was based on physical space. Because he's crawling and other kids his age may be walking, what will the space and environment look like, and how will he be able to develop? So actually being able to physically, and I know we'll probably get to that, but see the space.
Yeah.
Meet the people and hear their comfort with working with a child who had special needs, and their level of communication with me, because I had on bed rest, right? From his diagnosis, I still have binders of the information where I highlighted and took notes with the doctor. So I had a lot of information, and I'm a parent who's very open and willing to have communication. Usually I initiate it.
Right.
And I love when it's reciprocated. And so it was filling out the environment and the extension of our village in person in real time, from the receptionist at the desk to the family advocate to the teachers, even to the director and those in leadership, like really just feeling like, is this a place and space where we will feel and be welcomed, where he will be able to develop and thrive, and where I will be comfortable to entrust my child, drop him off, do what mommy needs to do without my mind being split in two places. Like, is he getting this? Do they know? All the questions that can happen. I felt so comfortable with the level of care for his teachers that I was able to do what I needed to do during the day and come back filled up to pick him up. And so that was a lot of what I did at the beginning, thinking, I love this first step, like thinking in terms of logistics, but actually going to see the places that I needed to be in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always, my boss loves analogies. She throws analogies out all the time. I don't care how folks want to refer to this entire navigation process, regardless of how old their kiddo is. If it's a filter that we're taking all of this information and then, funneling it through to see what's left at the bottom and where we need to go. March Madness basketball, we could say that we're bracketing it out.
There we go.
We got to keep going like this until we
Yes.
find that perfect match in the middle. Whatever it is that resonates with you, we do want you to have these conversations with yourself. And that's why I always say community, parents and caregivers. There are so many caregivers.
Yeah.
Whether you're the primary caregiver, guardian, or whether you are a confidant and a trusted individual who's going to be that emergency contact. I love you bringing that up. But these are also the folks that you're leaning into.
Yes.
And asking those questions of, have you experienced this? What was your experience with this? And what should I be considering? What we put in the workbook, of course, is literally just a few prompts. We could go on and on and on, but it's also to help prompt each other into the questions to ask and, jump off from there. I love hearing about the tours, and school tours is something that we encourage families. Like that's where I always go to. I'm like, please go tour a school. Yes. Now at Show Me Casey Schools, we call it experience because of course we host the annual City School Fair every single year at the downtown library. Because there are so many options, I will tell folks, like, come down to the City School Fair. This is that opportunity for you to be able to talk to more than one school in these short snippet conversations, see how you're received, see how they answer some of those preliminary questions, and hear a little bit more about the programming, because then it's going to be able to guide you into, oh, I am 100% ready to go step foot into that school. Because I also understand time management, and we're all balancing a lot of different things. So I want to make sure that folks are using their time wisely and getting closer to where they need to be in that way. So we want you to experience the schools in many different ways. Years ago, before Josephine started kindergarten, the building principal happened to mention the PTA meeting at a school we were interested in was happening, and there would be demonstrations from some of the teachers as to lessons and whatnot, that, and how they were taught, and that type of learning experience, and how curriculum was embedded into the different type of Montessori or language immersion, and so in this particular school, we were able to go ahead of time before we had even committed to that school to see what was happening. And it was a really, really wonderful opportunity. Now, I'm sure that you have personal experiences in walking into buildings. I know that Nina and I have talked about this a lot, right? it can be very sensorial too. You're visually looking for how, well received you are, but like, honestly, it helps when places smell good. It helps when things are clean and tidy, when you're seeing things organized, because this is the environment where your kid is actually going to be spending the majority of their day. And I often tell folks that sometimes walking into a space that maybe doesn't do it for you, that you're not connecting with, helps you recognize those things that are missing to get you that much closer. Did you have some experiences like that?
Absolutely. And I think, like what you said, makes me think of when I'm unsure of what I want, sometimes I have to take a little trip down what I don't want. And sometimes you experience like, oh, absolutely not. This is a deal breaker, non-negotiable, whatever the things are.
Exactly.
So I remember going to a school that I believe had a great reputation from the people that I heard, and even looking online and some of the philosophy around the curriculum. And I did a tour, and I kid you not, Danielle, I spent like 30 minutes touring the school, and I was like, I'm an educator, so I'm not necessarily impressed, but I'm like, there's learning happening, and I see what's going on.
Yeah.
I left the tour, and I was never asked my child anything about my child.
Right.
Not his gender, name, age, nothing about me, where I'm from, what I desire, vision, anything. And so for some parents, so what? This is a great program. It doesn't matter about me. I'm putting my child here. But for me, and I think a lot of how I was raised with being or having a background of the military environment and having a huge extended family. So my core family, my mom, dad, and sister, it was us. And then our family was spread out in different cities and different states. So our church family became family. Our school family became family. Our neighbors became family. So for me, that's a value, like that community and that social aspect. And I was like, oh, absolutely not. I remember leaving there. I'm like, I don't care if you're XYZ and,
right.
whoever.
This is off the chart and this person loves it. It's not for me.
It's not for me. And that doesn't negate or knock the program. Because like I said, I've heard testimonials from parents, but I'm like, that's not for me. What I value is greeting when I walk in and feeling welcomed and feeling wanted both ways, and building a relationship with the teachers. And like I said, the leadership and the staff. So I have walked in places where the environment, and I don't mean just the physical environment, but the environment lets me know or reminds me of what resonates with me and what I value and the values I want to instill in my son.
Right.
Because we can thrive in any place where we're welcome, where we're respected,
yes,
where it's safe, where he feels secure, like anywhere. And when I say anywhere, I'm like, if you want to take me to the beaches of Costa Rica,
sign me up.
And we can have school in the sand.
That's right. That's right.
It's really important. So yeah, that's major.
Well, I think that you have segued us so perfectly into some of the elements that we outline in the workbook. So, we jumped past it, but one of the things that we have in here is this definitional breakdown of some of the data that we include on the Show Me KC Schools website and the school profiles, right? And what that means is that perhaps there is testing numbers and data for a school based on English language arts, or ELA, as it's commonly referred to, math. That's going to be state standardized testing here in Missouri called the MAP, right? That's going to let us know on a particular day, in that moment for a test, how a group of students did, right?
Right.
I always just say it's one piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely.
And so, we outline and try to define this, but one of the things that Show Me KC Schools does not do is we don't put a rating system on schools. We don't have stars next to them. We're not going to decide whether this school is a 10 or whether it's a 4. There are other websites out there that are national websites. Great Schools does that. They talk a lot about their algorithm and how they come to that. Niche is another one. Those will pop up a lot on those realtor websites, for folks whenever they're relocating back to the area. At Show Me Casey Schools, we really want to give parents and caregivers the autonomy to say, sure, this is important to me. I want to look at it and I'm going to consider it in all of my comparisons. But we're also creating these tools like the workbook so that folks can take a little bit of that knowledge and then take the way that it feels to walk into a building and how they're greeted, to look at these questions and prompt those conversations like we talked about, because everything has a different weight for every individual person. And I've worked with parents a lot and have also reminded them, especially in the early stages, like that's what's so great about, talking to you, is that you've navigated the childcare and specialized early childhood setting. You've navigated into a pre-K setting within a public school system.
Right.
You're going to be navigating into the kindergarten space, right?
Yes.
And so you're really at this bliss point of being able to make these, considerations. And what I tell folks too is that this isn't just about your child as an individual. This is about your unit and your core.
Yes.
And you need to find out where you're going to feel your best as well, because you're a part of this. It's you and your child for the next 13 years navigating this space. And so what kind of parent are you? There's no judgment attached to that question.
Yeah.
And how do you want to interact with your school? And maybe reflecting on how you've interacted with caregivers or childcare facilities and whatnot previously, and taking that knowledge forward. And that's really what this workbook is about, is tapping into so much of that social element that you're describing so well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so with that, do you have an example, or could you share like a really great experience maybe that you've had in transitioning from one space to another, and what was like a good aha moment for you, whether it was like a parent meeting or even just meeting a fellow student in your child's class parent, and where you just kind of had like a yes.
Something that's, yes, I can, and I will. Something that's resonating with me is the gift of time. And I think the guide and the workbook and the work and the website and the work that you all are doing give parents time back, because these things take time. It takes intentionality. So one thing that I'm doing with my time is being intentional about being in spaces where parents are, where children are, where education is. And so I volunteer with Lead to Read. Nice. KC. Yes. I love literacy, love reading.
Yeah.
And I strategically chose to volunteer at Carver Dual Language School.
Because language is important to you.
Language is important to me.
Yes.
And Josiah will be entering elementary. So I'm kind of scouting out the land and learning the environment and getting a sense from the inside out as I work with a mentor student in Read once a week, every week. So I'm at Carver every week. And we meet with the students in the library. Okay, the way I feel about the workbook and the guide is the way I feel about books in general in the library.
Of course, yeah.
The librarian and I have connected several times and just had meaningful conversations, and I can tell literally, and I hope Carver knows that they have a jewel in their librarian. I can tell that if and when I send my son to that school, he will get a rich literary experience because of her work and her intentionality. And that's something that could only be explored or discovered by me being intentional about being in the space and building the relationship. And it's not a recruitment event or engagement, but it's every week I have relationship with someone in this building, and it's extended in that way. At Guadalupe, they do home visits. And so they take it a step beyond parent-teacher conferences, and they're able to really talk to you about your vision, what you're noticing with your child, developmental milestones, your goals, and then tell me what my child is learning and where we're headed next. And they ask the question, what are the things that are important to you? What do you want to work on? Ability Kansas City did the same thing. And I'll also say this, 2 weeks ago, I spoke at Hope Leadership Academy, which is also another phenomenal school. And they had a parent meeting. So I spoke to parents and we did some vision setting, but the intentionality of them holding space for parents every single month, having dinner provided, having childcare provided, like those little nuggets. And I hope the schools know whether or not my child is going there or my child is going there now, I can speak to the environment and the community at these places.
Right.
And that's major because parents don't always feel like they have the time or the resources to do a Google search or elaborate research, which is why Show Me Schools, KC, is amazing, but also why word of mouth.
Yeah.
Parents building community and being in community and talking about not just the negative experiences and when things don't go right or well, but about the glimmers of hope and the standout schools and the experiences and the relationships that they're building with their school communities. So I've had those experiences and they haven't always been around a program. They've been like organic, authentic experiences around relationship.
Yeah, no, I think thank you, by the way. Like, it's all of those things. My final question, of course, was going to be like, is there a key, bit or tip of advice that you want to leave the parents and caregivers who are listening to these episodes, listening to this episode, recognizing that you have been doing this, with your young child, but it really doesn't matter, right? Like we have put these tools here. So much of everything that you have done is reinforced. We talked about the school tours. We have questions that are prompting families in regards to school tours. So again, don't feel intimidated.
Yes.
Visit some of these things that we've put together for you, pluck whatever it is that you need, whatever those puzzle pieces are. But more than anything, talk to folks and get out there and experience. I'm available at Show Me KC Schools for one-on-one meetings. I always tell families, like, we can decompress at any point in time.
Yes.
Like, you went and visited some schools, so come back, give me a call, tell me what you saw. Let's talk it out. But is there one last thing that you would like to leave folks with before we close out today?
Absolutely. So I did some journaling today. I write on mirrors and walls and all kinds of refrigerators, anything that could be erased all day. And today I'm like, what do I want? Like, what, as it's getting warmer outside and, the temperature is changing. And at the top of my list is freedom. And I think many parents feel like they only have what's in front of them. Like, they don't have the freedom to choose something different.
Right.
And my sense of freedom and what pushes me to lean into the freedom is knowing that I have a community of support. When I was on bed rest, I had other friends and friends of friends who were also pregnant during COVID. And we were all like, what is this? What does this mean? I remember going to doctor's visits every single week in a mask, in a wheelchair, with insurance, transportation. Conversation for another day.
Right. That's another episode.
And I remember just leaning into a community. I built a community on Facebook. I'm like, who else is pregnant? We're going to call ourselves quarantine moms, and we're going to support one another. That has rolled into a community that I developed called Parent Plus. I say all that to say, here's the advice. Find your community and lean into them.
That's right.
Whether it is Show Me KC Schools,
right?
Whether it is PLTI, Parent Power Lab, maybe it's just your nuclear family, right, or your school community,
the neighbors.
And maybe it starts with one person, but open your mouth.
Start talking.
Start sharing the vision, as crazy or as big or as overwhelming as it seems, and say it enough that someone hears you, listens, and provides you with a resource.
I love that.
That is definitely it's the blueprint.
Yeah.
It's the blueprint. It's how I am where I am. And it's a message I want parents to understand, that you can have whatever it is that you want, and you have the right to open your mouth and say what it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's amazing and beautiful. And I love it.
Thank you. Can I say one more thing? I know we have to go.
Yes.
It's not just for your child, right? So you mentioned
It's for
earlier,
you too.
You and your child. When I sit down with parents, I'm like, what do you want? And sometimes they skip over their needs and desires, but start with you and build it out.
Yes.
And create a plan.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you so
welcome.
much for
You're so
joining me
welcome.
today. This has been such a pleasure. I've enjoyed our conversation so much. I hope our
too.
listeners do as well. We want them to stay connected. They can reach out to us at any point in time. We'll have things linked in the show notes. And until next time, we'll see you later.
See you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Show Me Casey Schools is committed to providing you with vital information that supports you while you support your child on their educational journey. Connect with us on social media at SMKCS and on YouTube at Show Me Casey Schools and on all your favorite podcast platforms.